In previous blogs, I've discussed the problem of fear, worry, and anxiety because they're such common issues that most of us struggle with periodically. And if you've seen my DVD on fear, you'll remember that I described that there are three parts to humans: body, personality, and spirit. And there are then three sources of fear which correspond to those three parts of humans. So there are physical conditions that cause us to be fearful, and those are the anxiety disorders. Those are the chemical imbalance mood disorders which require medical treatment because it's from a serotonin deficiency. And then there are personality causes of fear, and that's fear that comes out of your emotional baggage, which is based on your upbringing. So if you were raised in a fearful home, you would naturally develop fearful thinking habits. And then there are spiritual causes of fear. And so in this blog, I want to talk about spiritual causes. Now, Satan's primary method to attack humans is by inserting his thoughts into our mind. And the reason he does that is to try to distract us so that we will pay attention to his thought and then respond or react to it. And so he baits us. And when it comes to the problem of fear, the way he does it is by taking any situation in your life and then blowing it out of proportion so that you become very fearful and that you say, well, what might happen next? Or he takes another situation in your life and he creates an illusion of risk so that if there's a tiny potential risk, he makes that very big so that it creates this illusion to make you fearful. Now, why does Satan do that? Well, his primary purpose is to erode your trust in God because he knows if your trust level drops, your fear level will go up. And so he wants to keep us distracted. Now, God was teaching me about this subject, and he taught me that I should be aware that whenever I get a disturbing thought that starts with these two words, what if, I should become aware that this could be an incoming thought missile from a demonic source intended to upset me. So I became more tuned into that. So the next time you find yourself overwhelmed with fear or gripped with panic, think back to when it started, and did it start with a what if thought? And if it did, you've probably been baited and you fell for it and you bit on the bait and now you're experiencing fear. So what is the antidote? How do we defend ourselves from these incoming thought missiles? Well, in 1 John 4:18, it says that there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. Now let's look at the example of Jesus. He was human. When he walked on the planet, did he have a problem with fear? No. Yet there were all kinds of circumstances that really could have legitimately made him fearful. So why was he not fearful? Well, it's because he walked in perfect love. He walked in the presence of God. He was constantly hearing the voice of his Father, reassuring him, keeping him confident, and keeping him on target with his mission. So, how can we do that? Well, here are 3 steps that you can take to walk in perfect love that'll cast out fear. And the first is, be in God's presence. Invite God's presence into your life. Invite him to speak to you. And how do you do that? Well, invite him, worship him, talk to him. And that gives you a continuous awareness of God's presence and how much he wants to reach out and comfort you. And the second is this. The Bible says to speak to the mountains in our life. And you need to speak to the mountain of fear, which is growing when you've been hit by a what-if missile. So, make declarations like, I have the mind of Christ. I will think Jesus' thoughts, and I will not give in to the thoughts coming from the thought missile. And the third thing is, tune your ears to hear the voice of God. Because the more you hear his constant, reassuring conversation with you, it diffuses these thought missiles and eliminates the mountain of fear in your life. Now, if you've never heard the voice of God, or this is very unfamiliar to you, then you need to look at the video blog that I did some time ago on how to hear the voice of God. And I put a link to it at the bottom of this blog page. Also, I've included links of previous blogs I've done on fear, worry, and anxiety. So you can click on them to find out other things I've taught on this issue. But to live a transformed life, you need to have the mind of Christ to overcome thought missiles of fear. Now I want to hear from you. How has God taught you to overcome fear in your life? Just leave your comments in the box below. Now, if this is your first visit here, you need to get my free self-assessment guide, and to do that, just subscribe to my weekly email newsletter by filling out the subscription form, which you know is always right there. And I'll talk to you again next week, but this week, have the mind of Christ defeat the incoming thought missiles of fear.